Okay, guys. Package from China. Simply says assembly toy set, whatever the heck that means. So, block, Stryfe. Oh, wow, that came really quick. Okay. This appears to be the latest iteration of the Stryfe Select Fire Full Auto Kit. Hopefully we have better results with this one than we did on the Sledgehammer one. I've seen a previous iteration of this kit, and from what I saw, it was very impressive, but I did not see it in its entirety. So let's see what we're looking at here. Okay, seems to be quite an involved kit with lots of little connectors and computer brains. Okay. Got a little display, board, switch plate, potentiometer, a really big screw. Looks like a mag latch, like the mag, not the release, but the actual lock itself. And the cover plate, and some screws and some springs. The pusher, that actually looks like a nice piece. Fairly solid. Pusher assembly. Decent looking motor, looks like a 180. Plug all soldered on. Is that metal gears inside? With a bearing on both sides. Well, that's a nice little touch. Bearings over there, so that ought to be a pretty smooth little operation there. Okay, no instructions included, and there's a lot going on here, so I think I'll have to do a bit of digging to see what exactly goes where and what does what, because there's things here that I don't recognize whatsoever. So, yeah, do a little research, maybe call in some reinforcements, and we'll try putting this in a Stryfe again. So, see you in a minute. Okay, this thing is actually pretty darn impressive. Really exceeds my expectations. So let's let's open this thing up first, and we'll kind of discuss it from the inside out, and then end with kind of an overall discussion of things. So let's open this guy up. Okay, so foamy. Okay, so when we had this open before, there was boards everywhere and wires everywhere. Once you know who's what and who's who and what they're doing, it actually is a pretty brilliant little kit. Like I said, I was really surprised once I got a hold of the instructions, and I will try to link that in the description, because otherwise you have to consult a seller or something like that. I don't know why the instructions are so hard to get a hold of, but once you see what's going on, it actually it's just a really brilliantly put together kit. Like I'm still just really surprised at the engineering that went into it and everything. For really, I mean, it's still a toy, but it's just some impressive engineering to make sure this thing works the way it's supposed to. All right, now please come here. Thank you. What you have is the pusher assembly is all kind of a single unit, and it's got bearings in there, which is cool. It's got we got a long board that fits in the back. The power comes in one side, and motors wire up to the other, and it's just actually a plug-in. You just there's a little set screw that you loosen up, put the end of the wire in, crank down this set screw, and you're rolling. Which was really kind of surprising to me. Everything else plugs in. The only soldering you have to do is on the motors themselves, and just soldering the leads on there. Everything else is plug in basically, which is really cool. There's apparently some kind of sensory stuff or something inside the pusher housing. I'm not sure how the cycle control works, but that's a different discussion. But you have what is essentially the main power thing. The power comes in and out, and the motors come out. Then you've got a little switch board that fits in here that kind of takes the place of the original mag sensor electrical lock thing, and a new cover plate, a new mag catch thing, which has a little lever up here that trips the world's tiniest little switch right here, which I don't even know if I can get. I'll try to take a picture maybe to see if it'll show up. But this little tiny square thing has a little tiny black lever that moves, and that is the switch. You can kind of see it moving there. There's two more up here underneath this cover, but you have the top of the trigger, this little arm here that was originally part of the lock, instead trips these two tiny little switches. One is the rev switch, one is the firing switch, one or the other, however that works. Just really, really impressive. So the thing must be like MOSFETted to heck and back or something for such a tiny switch to handle the current that these things are able to put out. When I installed this the first time, I just put I just used the stock cage with Rhinos worker wheels as an old setup out of my Marauder Rapid Strike, just because I wanted to play conservative to see how the module and everything itself worked before I risked burning it up, because there had been people having issues with the previous iteration, the 3.3 version, I believe, that was blowing boards and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure I was able to test the abilities of the kit itself before I decided to see how far or how much power the kit could handle. Now I had left the rev switch in here just as a safety, since it is a single trigger operation. I wanted to have this to where you can't just accidentally pull a trigger and end up shooting stuff everywhere. So this acts essentially as a trigger lock, which seems inefficient, but it works for me since I'm instinctively pull the rev trigger anyway before I pull. So that's me. It's not necessary though. You can take that out entirely and plug up the hole or whatever if you want. You have a little control set up here that has a 5-way switch. 5-way switch meaning it looks like a single push button, but it pushes in, it pushes down, it pushes up, it pushes left, it pushes right. Holding down in either of the directions opens up a different setting. You can change the rate of fire, which I had no idea, which is super cool. So you can have a slow rate of fire, you can have a really fast rate of fire, you can have something kind of in the middle, and it goes in increments of 5 from 0 to 100, and I think it got up to 135 before it started having cycling issues. I leave it around 45, which is a good controllable rate of fire, and I really like it. But being able to switch that within a couple seconds, I mean, it's not something you can change on the fly as quickly as, the select fire, being able to switch that way. But, if you are setting up for a game or something and you want to have a little quicker rate of fire, slower rate of fire, you can adjust that, which is super cool. And it doesn't just change the speed of the motor, it actually cycles. It doesn't just, crank her around slower. The cycles are just as quick, usually, but it's like, rotation, 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 instead of just like a consistent rear kind of thing like you have on the rack and pinion type setups. This crank and rod deal is a lot more precise, and I don't know if there's some sensor thing in there. It's a whole made together unit that's got the magic inside, obviously, because that's how it works. I don't know how it works, but it works well, and that's okay. You also have this display here, which not only gives you the readout for what options you're setting. It's very basic. It's just a one of those 7-segment or whatever, 3 digits. But it also is a voltmeter. It also is a ammo counter. It does count up. That's the only setting it has. It just counts up, and it resets when you push the mag release. So whether you're inserting a mag, taking a mag out, or whatever, it will always reset. It does seem to go up indefinitely from what I've seen. It'll go up past 100 or whatever before you take a magazine out. It doesn't, like there's these other boards that I haven't talked about yet. Up here they have sensors that I assumed were, were part of the ammo counter. I don't actually know what they do. I haven't figured that part out yet. because the ammo counter seems to be predicated on the rotation of the pusher. So you can sit there and hold the trigger down with no magazine in it, and it'll still run the numbers up, which is kind of a bummer. But I don't really rely on the ammo counter part as much anyway. And I believe you do have the option to shut it off. I can't remember which direction that is, but those the particulars on that are all under the in the instructions. You can also, there's a setting in there that's something about flywheel noise suppression or something. I've played with all kinds of settings there, and I don't know what it does. I couldn't get it to work, and I haven't heard anything. So that's not really an issue to me. It doesn't really take it away from anything. It's just kind of like there's a setting here that I don't know what it does, so whatever. I'm currently running near rhinos and Cyclone flywheels in a containment crew cage, and I haven't had any issues with the board wanting to burn up or anything like that. So, no, really surprised. I ran this in a war, kind of a family game over the Memorial Day weekend, and thought I was running it pretty hard, and didn't have any issues with it. There is one thing that I'm not a computer guy. Once in a while, it gets confused, and sometimes sometimes the counter will get a little weird, and it does something I don't understand. But I think that might be because I bump it and it goes into a different setting that I don't know about. Sometimes it'll want to keep cycling. I don't know if that's an issue with the switches or if it's something with the computer thing. But sometimes it gets confused. It did a weird thing over the weekend where instead of revving up and then firing at the end of the trigger pull, you'd rev up when you pulled it, and then as you let the trigger go, it would fire, regardless of the setting you have it on, whether it's single burst or full auto. When you go full auto, of course, when you let go of the trigger, it would just go crazy. But moving the trigger around and playing with that straightened it up, and then I did what you expect to do. And if you have electronic issues, you turn it off and turn it back on again, right? I'm not an electronics guy, but I've heard that, and that seemed to straighten it up. Any issue I've had with the thing acting funny or whatever, I've been able to cure with just resetting it, is by just turning it off, turning it back on. But the on-off switch is the mag release, basically. When you let's see, can we plug this guy in? To turn it on, you push the mag release, and basically the reset button becomes the on switch, off switch. So you hold it down until it starts to do things. It's usually like 4 seconds, 5 seconds or something. But it will load. It'll give you here a number, usually goes like in fives or whatever, and goes 0 to 100. Once it reaches 100, it means it's loaded. As far as the programming and magical computer brains going on there, it'll reset to 0 as the ammo counter, and then I don't know if it'll work without the. There's a very short lead that connects the switch here on this side of the shell, which I guess I should mention. This is single fire. Halfway through is 3-round burst. All the way over is full auto. It's easy to switch between like that. There is a little board on the back that houses the switch. Then there's a little lead that comes off to this guy. But in order to have it hooked up, you can't really separate the shells very well. So we'll see if it works on its own. So. So that's kind of how that guy works. As far as the actual practice of the kit, I don't know what the differences are with from the 3.3 or whatever, the previous version versus the 6. I don't know why there's such a big jump. I do know there's a lot of issues with the previous one. I haven't heard from anybody else having issues with this version of the kit. It's a little complicated in that it's got this control thing up here, which doesn't really. I don't really need that personally. It's not like, oh, it's got that cool thing over here, so I'm sold. It's more of, I guess it's easier, instead of having the 3 buttons that we had before, or a different kind of switch, everything is neat and orderly. Everything is relatively easy to understand. like I said, it's just a brilliantly engineered little kit. It's really, in my opinion, far better than we deserve for what it is. Price-wise, I guess I have to tell this story. When we had our little backyard war for Memorial Day, then we were setting things up, and my wife said, "Hey, where's my gun?" And I said, "I don't think you have one." And she says, "Well, I'm going to steal yours." And she stole this one. And so I put it on single fire because she gets kind of heavy on the trigger sometimes. And having a single trigger operation with select fire, she had a good time with it. She's not crazy about NERF, but she wanted to steal my magazines and then shoot me. But I asked her later, what did you like about it? And she says, "I like that I can just pull the trigger and not have to worry about anything. It didn't jam, it didn't act up, she had no problems with it." And so this is actually, I'm probably going to build this for her later. She wants a fancy paint job and a little cosmetic work and stuff. So yeah, the fact that she enjoyed it so much kind of reinforces the quality and the features and everything to me. I also showed my dad, and he played with it, and he says, "I need one of these. How much does it cost?" And I said, "Well, they're usually around about $50. And he says, "Well, maybe I don't need it quite as much." So it is really for it's $50. It's one of those things where it's not like, everybody should go around out and buy one. But if you want these features, if you want the select fire, if you want all these things here, then it's a good deal. And in my opinion, it's worth it because there's a lot of electronics in here. There's a lot of wire. There's a lot of stuff going on. The print quality is pretty darn good. The fit is really good. Installation was a piece of cake. It took maybe like 15 minutes, honestly, to install it. It took less time to install this than it did to figure out what the heck was wrong with that sledgehammer kit that I played with a couple weeks ago. So you do have to do a little bit of trimming. There's the rib that runs across the top where this thing's sitting that the original pusher rides on. You do have to trim that off. You do have to trim off a little bit right in here for the board. That's all explained in pretty decent detail. I mean, not nice clear photographs anyway in the instructions. There wasn't really anything confusing in the instructions. There wasn't a whole lot of words, a lot of just pictures and stuff mostly. But everything was clear to me, and I had no idea what the heck any of these things were. This board down here fits in place of the original wire cover thing. This board here just kind of lays over the top and plugs in essentially to some spots on the shell. Let me do this without dropping the screws out. Plugs into this guy basically. And so you do have to kind of fit the shells together and then tuck the board up in there as you set it together. So that's something to be mindful of. Also, there is this short lead that connects the select switch here to the main board. You do have to be aware of that. You plug it in, and you have to kind of hold it close together and then kind of sneak it in sideways. And so it's not something you can throw open, quick and easy all the time. But it is good enough, I think. It gives you just enough accessibility. Installation for the mounting this plate here is actually pretty darn cool. There's a 3D printed part that fits on the back side that fits into the corner of the shell here that you run screws through the printed part itself, and they poke through the shell, which marks your holes. And then there's a bigger screw that comes with it that screws through a hole in the back of that same cover, that same block in the back, which lines up your hole here. Then all you gotta do is take it apart, and then you have those 3 holes marked already. You can run the screws through this way. It's just a brilliant little template. It's just one of those things that, because at first I was like, man, how do you get this thing set in right? How do you get the holes right? It's fairly idiot-proof, but I know there's some pretty darn good idiots out there, so somebody could probably ruin it. But as far as a non-technological guy, personally, I had no issues with it. Everything fit together well. The print quality's good. It has just enough features to make it interesting and versatile without being overly complicated. It does have a few settings, like I said. It's got that sound suppression or whatever that I couldn't figure out. It's got different voltmeter settings. I think it said it's got an onboard alarm. When the LiPo discharges enough to where it's like close to the danger level, it's actually, I think, slightly above the danger level, it will shut the unit down. So basically it prevents you from playing with it and running the battery down once it reaches a certain point, which is kind of a pain in the neck because I didn't know it did that. And so it was giving me a lot of grief and I couldn't figure it out and it was frustrating me. and then I realized, oh, my battery's dead. Plug a new battery in, everything's great. So it's kind of got that cool safety feature that, you know, gives you an added level of security, I guess. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. But as far as the kit overall, I'm just really, really impressed with it. It's not something that everybody should have. Like I said, it's not a you know, totally go out and buy it. If you can get it on a good deal, maybe. But I do think that for what you're getting, it is worth that, you know, $50, $55 price tag, because you are getting a lot of bang for your buck. There's a lot of cool features there and stuff. And if you do need that, then yeah, for what it is a good, solid product. Haven't had any issues with it really. Everything fits together well. I don't know, I was really, really impressed. I wasn't expecting a whole lot, especially with how many issues the previous iterations have had. But as far as being an idiot-proof, pretty close to drop-in kit, everything fits out of the way. I didn't really have any installation issues. It's just a good piece, and I don't know if they're going to continue to develop this platform anymore, because this here I don't have really any issues with the kit itself, which I was actually expecting to have issues. So I'll go ahead and put the link in the description below if you're interested in this. If you have any questions about any of the particulars of the kit or the installation or the experience or whatever, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, and I will be sure to get to them. And I guess we will be seeing you guys next time.